They say one of the closest bonds is between a boy and his dog. But what about a Superboy and his dog? There's a lot of owner and pet pairs in DC's latest animated film, League of Super Pets, as well as plenty of friendships and other relationships, both wholesome and questionable. Where do they all land on the healthy to toxic spectrum? So sit down, silly. That's what we're gonna find out. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is DC League of Super Pets Relationships, healthy to toxic. Just like with our last video, we're going to emphasize that there are major spoilers. Furthermore, don't expect to see any references to outside material like comics or cartoons. We're just focusing on the Super Pets film. First, we have the most wholesome relationships. These relationships are the healthy. Easily earning our gold medal of healthiness is the friendship between all the members of the Shelter Pets gang. It's only natural that when you're trapped in a place for so long, you start to form bonds with the people, or in this case, animals, that you're trapped with. Now, they aren't always on the same wavelength. For example, the other pets don't always understand why Ace would rather escape the shelter instead of trying to get adopted. However, this doesn't stop them from being close friends. They always have each other's backs and not only look out for each other, but encourage each other too. Ace especially seems to be the best friend a pet could ask for, as he can be a great listener and understands how to help his friends with their issues. Really, the only not-so-great thing you could mention about this relationship is how Ace frequently lies to the other shelter pets about the farm upstate. But even this is less about the lie itself and more about him trying to give the other pets hope, to help them dream about a place where they can be happy. So we're willing to overlook such a small white lie. For our silver medal of healthiness, we're giving it to the film's only romantic relationship, Superman and Lois. They are essentially #couple goals in every sense. Even when they're doing something as simple as buying each other snacks and hanging out in the park, they're being incredibly sweet. This is one of the few incarnations where Lois actually knows the truth about both Superman and Clark Kent. And this subtlety shows just how much Clark trusts Lois. She proves herself worthy of this trust when she tries to help Superman when he's struggling against bad guys like Lulu. Lois is also incredibly understanding of Superman's work, even if she's a bit frustrated when their date nights get interrupted. It's clear they care about each other a lot, to the point where they both want to get married to each other. Needless to say, we're thankful that this couple had very little drama to deal with. Well, other than a somewhat jealous pup. Getting the bronze medal of healthiness is the friendship between Crypto and Ace. Now obviously, their friendship sort of started off on the wrong foot, or paw. Crypto seemed like he was looking down on Ace, not hesitating to stop him when he heard that Ace was breaking out of the shelter. Ace, meanwhile, just found Crypto annoying, seeing him as a weirdo. Throughout the film, however, they were able to warm up to each other. While Crypto did have to technically blackmail Ace into helping him, it didn't take long for Ace to help him willingly. He gave Crypto helpful advice and even opened up about his tragic backstory. Crypto, in turn, gained a ton of respect for Ace, seeing him as a heroic dog instead of just some street mutt. Much like the typical Superman and Batman dynamic, while they may not always get along and can partake in a bit of snarky banter, they have each other's backs and will always be there to help and protect each other, like a pair of true best friends always should. Naturally, we also had to include the rest of the shelter pets and the relationship that they have with Crypto. Though he doesn't have as much animosity towards them as he originally had with Ace, Crypto still didn't seem to think much of the shelter pets when he first met them, instead seeing them as allies to help him with his rescue mission. Over time though, Crypto saw them as much more than that. The shelter pets, meanwhile, seemed to accept him right away. PB especially had a ton of admiration for Crypto, which wasn't all that surprising given how big of a fan of superheroes she is. Characters like Chip and Merton, on the other hand, were a bit more neutral, with the latter even casually insulting Crypto at times. Still, this doesn't stop bonds from forming, and once Crypto actually stopped and listened to his new team, instead of just pushing them into battle, that's when they became a true team. Next, we have Superman and Crypto. From the very beginning, all Crypto wanted was to be there for his boy, to protect him, and to be his best friend. And they are best friends. They play together, hang out together, and even watch British Bake Off together. However, for as close as they are, it's not a perfect friendship. Because Supes is Crypto's only friend at the start of the film, Crypto is more than a little possessive of him, causing him to feel jealous of Lois after a while. It gets to the point where he becomes angry at Clark for even going on dates with her. Now, to be fair, Clark could have done a better job of helping Crypto adjust to the new situation, which was what he tried to do when he tried to find an animal friend for Crypto. For as annoyed and upset as Crypto might have been with Superman, he did all he could to rescue Supes after he got captured by Lulu. Additionally, by the end of the film, Crypto was willing to let Superman live his own life, understanding that truly loving someone means sometimes letting them go. Thankfully, Superman never wanted to replace Crypto with Lois, and he makes it clear to his dog that he's still his best friend. While there are a couple of flaws that kept his relationship from making it into our top 3, it's safe to say that it became much healthier by the end of the film, allowing it to stay in this tier. Finishing up the healthy are the incredibly cute relationships between the Justice League and their new pets. While the Leaguers might not have been pet people at the start of the film, not quite understanding why Superman was so affectionate towards his dog, they certainly became pet people by the end. We only get a couple of brief scenes of them all interacting, but we can already see the bonds forming. From Wonder Woman and PB's mutual respect for each other as warriors, to the understanding felt between Ace and Batman, to the feeling of safety and security that Green Lantern is able to give Chip. Like we said, it's incredibly sweet, and honestly, if there had been more scenes of all the pet and owner pairs interacting, we're sure that these relationships would have been higher. Next, we have the relationships that aren't too bad but could still use some work, causing them to land somewhere in the gray area. We only have a couple of relationships that we want to touch, with the first being the partially rocky relationship between Crypto and Lois Lane. Yeah, when you've got one person in the relationship fantasizing about throwing the other person into the ocean, you can sort of tell that things aren't as healthy as they could be. Now, to be fair, things are never hostile, hence why they aren't any lower. In fact, while she isn't as close to him as Superman is, Lois still cares about Crypto's well-being. She encourages Superman to get Crypto a friend, not as a means to get the dog out of the way, but simply because she wants to see Crypto happy instead of lonely. After moving past his jealousy and understanding just how much Supes cares about Lois, Crypto is able to show a bit more affection towards her. He even saves her life after Lulu threatens to crash her news helicopter. While they might not have had the best start, the potential for a friendship was there, which made it sweeter when they finally reached that point. Following that, we have the business relationship between Lex Luthor and Mercy Graves. There isn't a whole lot to say about them. Mercy is Lex's assistant, but she doesn't do much to help out. She mostly just casually insults him, but Lex doesn't seem to mind this all that much. Surprisingly, Lex even frees Mercy from prison after Lulu frees him. Given that he had just finished backstabbing another ally, it would have been easy for him to go completely solo. The fact that he didn't indicates that he must care about Mercy somewhat. Unfortunately for him, Mercy doesn't seem to share the same courtesy, bailing on him as soon as Lulu comes for her revenge. So while we can't exactly call it a friendship, maybe their business relationship isn't all that professional either. Finally, we've arrived at friendships that aren't all that friendly. These are the toxic relationships. First is an unlikely pair, Lulu and Whiskers. After gaining her telekinesis, Lulu decides to be extra cruel and starts a fire within the animal shelter, leaving the other shelter pets to die, all except Whiskers because apparently not even an evil guinea pig can kill an adorable kitten. Grateful to Lulu for saving his life, Whiskers takes it upon himself to be her assassin, taking on the super pets in her stead, and slowing them down while at the same time trying to destroy them with his various missiles and bombs. While we have to commend Whiskers for his loyalty, it seems one-sided. In fact, after they leave the shelter, we don't see Lulu and Whiskers interact again. It's hard to say if she even knows that Whiskers is even trying to help her, or if she would even care that much. For these reasons, we felt it deserved a place in the toxic tier. Getting our bronze medal of toxicity is another villainous partnership, the relationship between Lulu and her fellow guinea pigs, specifically Keith and Mark. While it was a somewhat nice gesture to give the other guinea pigs superpowers, Lulu makes it clear that not only do these powers come with a price, but she also simply cares less about their wants and well-being and more about what they can do for her. This is demonstrated when Lulu forces all the guinea pigs to leave their classroom, which they were originally perfectly content with. Because they were still grateful for her for the powers, the other guinea pigs still helped Lulu with their plans, but only to a point. When they learned of her ultimate goal, Keith and Mark spoke out against it, saying that they were okay with kidnapping but not okay with murder. This led to Lulu lashing out against them, nearly killing them. So yeah, while they may all be from the same species, there's very little, if any, loyalty to them on Lulu's part. Earning the silver medal of toxicity is the relationship rivalry between Crypto and Lulu. It's sort of sad to think that if Lulu weren't so blinded by her own thoughts of power, vengeance, and revenge, she and Crypto could have been friends. Originally, Crypto even saved her life from Lex's animal testing lab, despite Lulu's objections. When Lex betrays her, Crypto offers her a spot on the Super Pets team, still being willing to give her a second chance even after everything. Unfortunately, Lulu is just too far gone. At most, Lulu seems to see Crypto as a nuisance and treats him as such. What's more, she seems to enjoy being cruel to him in addition to beating him up. She taunts Crypto with the fact that Superman is going to marry Lois, and later on, after Lex's betrayal, Lulu still refuses to back down and continues trying to kill all the supers as well as Lex. She even tells them that if she can't have her owner, then Crypto can't have his either. Needless to say, the possibility of friendship is completely off the table after that, and we can't exactly blame Crypto for doing what he needed to do in order to take Lulu down once and for all. Finally, and perhaps unsurprisingly, we're going to be giving the gold medal of toxicity to Lulu and Lex Luthor. Lulu adored Lex, seeing him as not just her owner and a fellow genius, but essentially her soulmate. All she wanted was to rule the world by his side, and for him to care about her just as much as she cared about him. Unfortunately, that just isn't the type of man Lex is, and it only takes seconds for him to betray her after she breaks him out of prison. To Lex, Lulu's power and genius don't mean much. She's still just a guinea pig. Naturally, when Lulu comes after him for revenge, Lex tries to backpedal on his betrayal, but Lulu sees through the shallow attempt. Given how dangerous they are as villains and how cruel and heartless they both can be, they were never good for each other. And if that's not the definition of a toxic relationship, we don't know what is. Really, if we're being honest, maybe it's for the best that they were never actually friends. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos, but most importantly, stay wicked.